Okay, I know I felt it last season, but despite how clearly villainous he is, Marco Inaros is still the hottest thing on television. I'm telling you, it hurts. It hurts to look at how beautiful that man is. With that being said, hello interwebs. I am here to review the first episode of, sadly, the final season of my favorite science fiction show on television right now, The Expanse. Yes, I say my favorite science fiction show, and just so you all know, because I haven't really talked too much about this series or show elsewhere, I've dabbled in it here and there, and we'll talk a little bit about why I haven't reviewed much of this show in just a minute, but I love this series. As much as I love Star Trek, and I adore Star Trek Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, all of that, and Star Trek is easily by far my favorite science fiction franchise, and the Star Trek shows are clearly some of my favorite science fiction shows in general. But The Expanse, just on its own, I think is probably my favorite science fiction show on today. I think it is one of the most thoughtful, most nuanced, most complex, most well-characterized, most political science fiction shows that we have, that I think is so deeply understanding of a lot of the political dynamics both in humanity, but it also has these really cool eldritch horror, alien sci-fi elements. It gets like hard science fiction. It does science so well and depicts space travel so well. This show is truly fantastic, and I've seen every episode of the show. I've read all of the books. I'm currently in the middle of reading the final book, Leviathan Falls, so please do not spoil that for me in the comments, because I'm very excited to finish out the book, and I will be reviewing and discussing it on this channel when I do finish it. So very excited about that, and I've read all the novellas. So I'm very much a big The Expanse stan, and I truly adore it. I say all that just because I want to show you how much I have passion for this show, and the reason that I've not actually shared much of that passion in my videos is because something you realize as a content creator is you feel this need to monetize all of your time and all of the things that you love, and so sometimes as a creator you learn that you kind of need to keep some things for your own self and your own enjoyment. As much as I love being in the conversation about Star Trek and Marvel and Star Wars and all that stuff, whenever you watch those shows now as a content creator, you're like, oh, okay, what do I need to say? How do I present my discussions and my conversation on these pieces? And with The Expanse, I very much just wanted to be like, I just want to enjoy this, and I just want to sit back and love it. And so with that being said, I am going to be reviewing the first episode of this final season and talking about that. But I will say I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to be reviewing every episode of the series. I might, depending on my energy and my time and things like that, but there's also an element of me that's like, I kind of want to just keep it for myself and enjoy it. So there'll definitely be some videos on it. I still want to do a big video essay on The Expanse. I just want to set the expectation that while I'm talking about this episode of this final season, that I might not review every single episode, but I'll definitely have some episodes to continue the conversation as we go. That being said, the reason I'm doing this review of this episode is because I am feeling such a bittersweetness at the fact that this is the final season of the show, especially the fact that while this is the final season of the show, this is not adapting all of the books in the series. There's still, I think, 3 more books in the series, and this is very much adapting, I think, the 6th book in the series. I've lost a little bit of track of the timeline of stuff because it's been a hot minute since I've read the books. So it is a little bit sad that, like, oh, this series is not going to finish up, but I am hoping that those hints that we've seen online, the Expanse Writers Room Twitter account has hinted every once in a while that they might be done with the series, but there might be some movies coming. So I'm excited about the possibility of Amazon funding some movies, because I hate Amazon, but if they're giving me Expanse movies, I'll at least appreciate that. I'll take that, despite the fact that they're an awful hellish company that this show, The Expanse, directly confronts and says, hey, you're terrible. Don't monetize space, Jeff Bezos. Also should say, if anyone hasn't listened to the Ty and That Guy podcast, go listen to it, because it's a fantastic podcast with the guy who plays Amos and also one of the writers that makes up James S.A. Corey, the writers of the book, and one of the producers on the show. Great podcast. They have such insightful thoughts on science fiction, on the show. I truly adore it. Great podcast. Go check it out. Also, one last thing, I know I'm kind of talking a lot about the show and not about this episode, I swear we'll get to it, but one last thing that I just want to share my excitement about with The Expanse is last night at the Video Game Awards, they announced an Expanse video game coming from Telltale starring my favorite Polyam Queen drummer, which I am so freaking excited about. Like literally last night they announced a Star Trek Telltale type game, they announced an Expanse Telltale type game, and I'm just like, apparently video games are just being made for me at this point, so very excited about that. So I just needed to share my excitement about the video game. But all that being said, let's actually talk about the episode, because I just wanted to gush about this season of the show. Starting off with a negative on my review of this episode, given that this is the final season of the show, it did feel a little bit weird that there's not like a huge sense of like drive or like a big like, oh my gosh, this is the final season, like big build up to that. It did feel like the start, a good start, but just kind of a start to another season, which does lend credence to my movie theory going on. But that would be my big knock about this show, is it feels like it's kind of rushing towards the finish a little bit, and as a result, it does not have like the big like time for us to like sit with these characters as much as I would like, which does feel a little bit frustrating. But let's get into the episode here. First off, we have the opening sequence where we have a little girl in this sort of forest on Iconia, one of the planets through the ring gate, and she meets these little strange dogs out in the woods. Now, I won't spoil where that's going for those of you who have not seen the or read the books, but if any of you have read the novella Strange Dogs, or I think the 8th book in the series, you know where this storyline's going. So I'm very excited to see how that's going to be paying off down the line. So cool stuff coming for that, but I won't spoil too much about it. But if anyone's read the books, you know. But getting into the episode proper, we have basically a few different storylines here. First off, we have Marco Inaros and Philip kind of hanging out on Ceres Station. Marco's definitely playing up his like leader of this rebellion of Belters, and I truly, again, I love all of this stuff with him. I think they really nail this, like his egotistical nature, and yet also the fact that he is a little bit right. I understand that there's also, like, I love the news feeds that we see here where Belters say like, hey, now Earth understands what it's like to be Belters. And very much understanding like these people are reclaiming the fact that they have not been allowed to own their own space, own their own stations, own their own land, and they've been sort of put down for such a long time. Again, mirroring very real times where that sort of aspect and that sort of dynamic has come up. But also the fact that Marcos is very much a opportunist leader. He wants the power for himself, and he likes being aggrandized, and he likes having all the attention. And I still like seeing the subtle shades of that he is not wrong necessarily, but he is not exactly the best leader for this job, and definitely a lot more bloodlusty than he possibly should be. I'm not fully against violence completely in situations like this, but I think he is definitely doing way more than he should, as we see over in Avasarala's storyline that we'll see in just a second. But the one other frustration with this sequence that we've seen is we see Philip here. Philip, I get his characterization very much. He's sort of a teen who is under his father, who is not getting as much attention as his father. He feels a little bit like inept next to his father, and he's like a teenager. He should be in the prime of his life, and so he's like kind of rebelling a little bit, doing that like teenage rebellion thing, sleeping with girls, not really caring about them, and kind of like showing off the fact that I'm the son of this guy, but also feeling the frustration of not being respected as much as he feels that he should be. Again, it's a very teenage dynamic. But it is very frustrating to watch. There's a reason there's the stereotype of like frustrating teenage characters in media, and it's very much at play here with Philip. It's understandable. I get it clearly comes out of the psychology, but it's very frustrating to watch him being an absolute jerk and an idiot for most of this episode. And the way his scenes end with him shooting his friend was like, oh my god, this is just going very, very extra and very, very far. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, even though I understand exactly where they're kind of going with his character and it makes sense for him, but it was just a little bit frustrating to watch. One thing I did like, however, was that his friend did have the alligator skin coat, and him being like, these are going to be rare, we're destroying Earth, and that, like, again, that like makes sense and like showcases the loss of what was the shifting dynamics here, and also the loss of what it means to lose Earth here. And so, and I think also in the context of showing this other alien planet at the start of the episode, being like, well, there's still other planets and there's still other aliens and creatures to be found possibly out there. And so the specific nature of how important Earth was to humanity, being our homeland and our homeworld, is slowly going away. And I thought that was like a cool little implication here, and sort of implication of space travel. So I like that little like small world building element in the background of this story. But speaking of Earth Fallen, we do have Avasarala's storyline here. I love Avasarala, clearly the best character going on here, but she doesn't get a ton to do here, but we do get to her mostly being like upset about the nuclear winter of Earth, and the fact that Earth is being like kind of pushed down and not able to do much because they're just trying to defend themselves from Marcos. And you do feel the sense of huge loss, and that opening scene with her where she's talking about the crop yielding and like how much Earth is just no more, really. Like, people are surviving on it, but Earth really is now just a kind of nuclear wasteland, or a nuclear winter wasteland. And it was just kind of sad to see, and her doing her best, but also kind of being a little bit of a totalitarian leader to a degree, as we see later on with one of the Earthers saying that she needs to learn that she's has she has citizens, not subjects, and Bobby sort of feeling that as well. And it's nice to see Bobby kind of standing up a little bit to Avasarala here. And I like Avasarala having this moment where she's like feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders, sort of subtextually through the gravity metaphor, and her being in low gravity and her feeling like, oh, I have all this responsibility on my shoulders that I need to deal with. I thought it was just a really great subtextual line. And Bobby and her basically saying like, Bobby, you hate this job. Let's go have you do something else. I thought was cool setting up for Bobby going forward. But then this leads me to the drummer and also the Rocinante scenes, and this is probably where my criticism earlier on is really felt, because I don't really get the sense from either the drummer or the Rocinante scenes, while I did love them and thought they were good characterization, I don't get this like impetus of like, oh, there's like this big thrust to like finish off the season's storylines and like this big giant push forward. It felt like more just standard episode type stuff, which was fine, but it doesn't really feel like the final season as much. And so I think that that's where that criticism really comes into play with these scenes. That being said, they're still good. We get Drummer leading sort of a raid on some of Anaros's fleet. I loved seeing this, and like her having to because one of her polyamorous lovely family is not made to be a fighter, she has to kind of push them away and say, hey, we need to leave you, you're not made for this life, and how much that affects her and how much Drummer wants to keep her in her family, but has to be like, no, we need to focus on this first, and the sacrifices that she is making, not only for herself but for the rest of her family, is heartbreaking to see. And I thought it was very impactful to see those scenes. Again, not as like final season-y as it should be, given how much her character I really love and I want to see her like really in the middle of all the action. But it was still nice to see this sequence. I thought it was very well done, and I do like, again, the depiction of polyamory on The Expanse so much. It's one of the few shows that I think really understands how polyamory works and how everyone really loves each other and how there's different dynamics between everyone. Really, really great. And just like great depiction of polyamory here. This brings us over to the Rocinante section, where they basically stop Marcos from shooting another asteroid towards Earth, and they discover a drive on it. And I loved everything, like the internal politics of the Rocinante crew here. We get like little references to the fact that Alex Kamal has died, and I liked seeing the weight of that on this show. I loved Alex both in the show and the books, and spoiler a little bit for the books, but Alex does not die in the books, and part of the reason that Alex dies on the show was because the actor was kind of a shithead. We will leave it there. There's more to say about it, but we'll just sort of leave it there now. And it is disappointing that an actor being a jerk is the reason that a character that I really loved had to leave the show. But I'm very glad at the very least that if that is the case, that it's still, his death is given weight, and I think they've handled it the best that they could given the situation with him. And I like just seeing that it's kind of splintered the crew a little bit, that Naomi is kind of shitty towards Peaches, understandably so, getting that Peaches tried to kill them all a little while ago, but Amos rightfully saying is like, hey, give her a chance. She's not Alex, and Naomi saying you need to leave, and Amos being like kind of hinting like maybe I should leave the ship. Again, that sort of like splintering of the crew that I think they're probably building towards as we go into the final season. So I liked that sort of element being felt here. But also the dynamics between Holden and Naomi was really, really great as well, because Holden kind of puts himself in the line of fire and almost gets killed when he tries to take out the drive, and it shoots and almost kills him. And Naomi really feeling the toll of that and being like, I don't know if I can do this forever, and I don't know if I can see you risk your life forever. But I also really liked Holden coming in here and being like, oh, he's still obsessed a little bit with the alien stuff going on here, the proto-molecule stuff, and the people who killed the proto-molecule creators coming up here. We get little hints of that in the background, which is the stuff that I want to know what's going to go on with in this show. But also Amos rightfully saying is like, we have more immediate concerns. Don't abandon us because you're still like playing the game like 10 levels above where you need to be. And again, I liked that, but it was this sort of like hint about like being like, but that's where I want him to be as an audience member. So there's like this a little bit of tension between my expectation and hopes versus like what the show is very rightfully playing off of its characters' dynamics with. So interesting little subversion there, and we'll see how it goes. So at the end of the day, I thought this episode was really strong, still showcases the strong characterization and writing and world building of this series, and I'm excited to see where they go with it. But I am just curious because it really does not feel like the final season yet, and even there's some moments in this episode that really feel like it's pulling away from the idea of like really building this up as a final season, which again kind of leads me to being like, are they going to have movies always planned, or is this really meant to be the end of the show? I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out over this season, if it really is going to feel like that final season, if it's going to feel rushed or not, like what that dynamic level is going to be, because I really hope we don't have a Game of Thrones situation here where I loved almost every season of the show and then it felt like so rushed in the end, where it's like everything could have worked in the final season of Game of Thrones if they had just taken their time to do it. It wasn't like the story was inherently a bad idea. It was just sort of too rushed and they didn't give it enough time, and therefore it felt unearned completely and frustratingly, and just felt really crappily because they were just trying to get to the end. And so I hope that doesn't feel like the situation here. There's hints of it, which has me concerned, but overall I think this was still solid, and so we'll see how it goes going into this last season of the show. So that's everything that I had to say about The Expanse. I hope you enjoyed my review of it. Like I said, I might do episode-by-episode reviews. At the very least, I will do a season review. So at the end of the season, you'll definitely get a video from me. You might get some more in between. Maybe I'll double up episodes, stuff like that. So I just want to do this to talk a little bit about my love of The Expanse. We'll see if we'll get to episode-by-episode reviews. Depends also, by the way, on how well this video does. So if this video dies in the algorithm, then I probably won't do more because I'll just sort of save my energy. If this video does gangbusters, maybe that'll entice me a little bit more to do that. So if that encourages you to like and comment and subscribe, all that stuff, not the intention. I'm just being open and honest about my feelings on it. But that is a thing. But beyond that, thank you so much for watching. I'm excited to watch this final season of The Expanse, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.